And for that, we are all extremely grateful.
Oh, and Denise, we still haven't changed to daylight savings time on these clocks. Yeah. Yeah. You gotta crack the whip. You gotta put the fear in some people. So we can't start, can we? It's not gonna be one of those things. Oh no, Sue's here. Where'd she go? So, Denise. Yes. Oh, you turned on my mic. Good. Hard thing to do. All right, good evening, everyone. We are going to call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the Santa Monica City Council of April 10th, 2018. And could Councilmember Himmerich lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
It's my punishment. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That was very bad.
I was going to say cacophony is the first word that comes to mind, but we all said the pledge at our own individual pace. Could the clerk call the roll, please?
Councilmember McKim?
Here.
Councilmember Himmerich?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Here.
And Mayor Winter.
Here. And with that, could the clerk call the closed session items, please?
You have several closed sessions. You have real property negotiation, and that's at 1333 4th Street, 1324 through 1334 5th Street. Andy Agel is the negotiator, and it's for ground lease terms. You have existing litigations with HomeAway.com Inc. and Airbnb versus the City of Santa Monica. Pico Neighborhood Association and Maria Loya versus the City of Santa Monica. Shireri versus the City of Santa Monica. Then you have an anticipated litigation. There's one case. And then you have a conference with real property for 2322 Michigan Avenue. Again, Andy Agel is the negotiator, and this is for price and terms, and the owner of record is Kardashian Family Trust. And you have no request to speak.
All right, and I'll look over to my right to see what time we might be back.
We will hope to be back at 6:30.
All right, so we will go into closed session. We'll see everyone at 6:30. Hopefully I'll have my...
All right, let me just hook up my...
So, yeah, so, Mike, oh, no, thank you. Oh, and are you coming? Are you coming tomorrow night? Yes. Okay, and you do have food. No, I'm fine. Well, nuts, but you're not gonna, I thought you were doing like pizza, you don't put nuts. I was gonna do pizza, but I think I may do, like Z-Bar. That's fine, just no nuts. Okay, no nuts. Are you in the closed session? Yeah, but that's because of the prednisone thing. It's been like unbelievable. Okay.
So, Sue, you're on prednisone now?
Yeah. All right.
How are you, Tony?
A lot better now.
You were sick too, right?
Oh, man. Actually, I'm glad I didn't come.
You, Terry, and
You told me that I was contagious.
You're contagious?
I was.
Oh, yeah, so what did they,
She couldn't believe it. So they stick that thing up your nose?
oh, yeah, that hurts.
Oh, that's how you can tell you have a flu.
Right. Oh, and you did have it.
Yeah, because she couldn't believe it because I was feeling good, but I just had the legs and pain.
that's the key, Tony.
Because when she took, when they checked her, my fever and
Yeah.
my blood pressure and everything, she said everything was fine. She says, I bet you're just a cold. He says, the way to test it, I gotta put these little swabs up your nose.
Oh, I know. How about
No, just my nose.
Oh, it was bad. But
And
you know
that's
what?
when she said, no,
You had the flu, huh? So you got, maybe you have next year's.
uh,
Let me see those shoes. I like, they're like boots, huh?
Okay, my question is, can you change the time on this? Because it says 4:30 to 5:30. So 40 minutes from here.
I need a stand-in.
I really don't like the fact that you can see me on YouTube right now if you tune in. Because we leave that up closed session. The YouTube stream so that people know that we're in closed session.
Wait, so people can see you right now?
They see you
Awesome.
before you start getting excited.
The three people who are watching.
Well, those people are watching right now, but yes, the three that might be watching later. Something just come on.
kind of press release.
Silly question, but not really. If I put a camera in front of somebody, that's probably not gonna look good.
No.
No, I've checked all those like a bunch of times. You know, we switched power supplies out. You mean in the back of the monitor here? That's the only thing I don't know where it's goes.
I'll jump.
Is that XLR long enough or? Alright, well, we're doing it that next. Yeah. I actually didn't know that. Where are they at? Yeah, they're right next to the chair. Oh, they're reversed though. Aren't they in a barrel or something? Yeah. That's good to know. Get mail there. So you need mail with mail to mail. Oh no, that'd work then. Yeah, let's see if it works first. Yeah, actually, that's true. Power is on?
Yes. Okay. So the power.
Power?
Yep.
This one. Okay, so. The green and the white. It's the one I thought here, let's. The other.
Okay.
The wires in there.
No, I gotta go through and then up and turn. Goes through the back.
Yeah, it feels like the other connected. Here, I'm gonna grab a little flathead. Yeah, I'll go back and take a look.
Double. Sure. Well. Yeah, that's all the truth. Huh? Maker's Mark. Thought I'd try it. A friend of mine gave it to me when we were out at dinner. take the whole week, I'll do that. I'll do, John Walker's, I can move in Scotch. I can't go wrong with Tommy. Helen.
Let's just go through this thing. Problem here.
That's the one.
Yeah.
It's
Check, check.
Yeah, we'll bring it back. What, that one? Well. Cause the power won't still be snagging it. Yeah, the power cable won't fit in the side. Yeah, guess so. This one's working, I'll just leave it here.
Do you wanna pull that bad cable out of there?
Not stuck in for now. Yeah, we'll figure that out for Thursday.
Allison with Cultural Affairs.
The art walks.
Yes.
I edit some of the pieces, so that's why you look familiar
Oh,
to me,
right.
'cause I've seen
We
you.
have to have met.
No,
What's your name?
Deirdre.
Deirdre.
Hi.
Allison, well, nice to meet you face to face.
Oh, yes, it's art stuff.
Yeah. So we've got two pieces. So usually CTV has two. This is where they usually film, but they brought in another one for today. So it's gonna be live streamed. So like they could be like this, Joe. You know what I mean? They could be like. They need have to talk in that, or it won't be caught on the.
Yeah, no, they'll just be here then. Okay, it doesn't really- okay. I mean, it should probably just be like, well. Yeah, it should probably just be here. This is fine. I'm not gonna ever worry.
Well, see, and then also look at the video too, because you might want to like look out at people. You know what I mean? City council, people.
not the cameras like that.
Well, it's just to, it's just for when the Arts Month people are gonna be talking, it's not for the whole meeting. Although you can on camera anyway. Just for a particular item.
Check, check.
I got it.
Obviously, I'm looking there.
I think that, well, maybe it's the angle of the
It might
camera.
be the angle.
It's not very flattering.
It's a little, yeah. And you know, if there was a way to.
Lighting here is exactly.
I'm talking about something. I'm gonna do like, all you can do is put me right.
We're gonna look into that.
I'm happy. Artist, it's my wife. This is something most people don't know about. You guys probably don't come out on Sundays.
Check, check.
You know what, they might already be slated to cover it.
This is our resolution.
Okay, that's right, that's number one, that is number one. Hey, nice work. I think it's Jamaica, but no. You can't be calling Steve to say that they're okay?
It's one of them. I'm not sure what one it is.
Yeah, no, that's true, that's true. If it runs too late at night, we gotta. Yeah. Exactly.
Or I put glasses back.
The eyeballs. And you gotta have it, you gotta have to have a thick skin, cause you know we got, it is though. I've seen frost.
Okay. He's happy with it. Yeah, it was a power supply user. Actually, not a system. Sweet. Oh, no, this is.
Or they can, they see it as a form of air grievances. There's a limit. Okay. Russ. Mr. Russ.
That's how it's play out, so it must have been cables.
Yeah, I think it's probably.
I thought it was that one right there. Yeah.
Not I.
Yeah, I think it really is.
Never that, but I'm not in charge.
A steady line
Uh-huh.
coming from.
So I think it
When
needs
you
both.
come back, award
Yeah,
ready.
one's probably like
This.
a sending and receiving.
Keep getting them and do something else. Place the box.
Those other cities, yeah.
But then the chance, next year, the year after, say, okay, let's come back. We find out that.
All right.
Send it to them. Like 2 seconds.
Yes, I'm gonna see what we can find, but I think Debbie can.
All right, guys. Excuse me, are you the mayor of Santa Monica?
I'm
I have
trying.
a complaint. Listen here. I can't believe that I am.
Oh, no, no, I heard it. What's your complaint?
My complaint is,
No, it better be.
what is it? I am.
It's very common.
You need a different lens on it.
Oh, you know what?
Have some appearance.
Some makeup department come in.
Blame me. Blame me. Not enough makeup. Rather than the lens on the camera. Every time I watch it, I think, how can you make me look like that?
That would make you look.
What might be helpful is a thing here that says smile on your head, profile, very.
Look up.
Well, for a while, we were going for Hitchcock.
It's public record.
So this is it right here. So be prepared for it to feel really weird. Because I have a feeling that what you and Dan are going to bring into this space is going to make it very, yeah. So the space is going to reverberate a very interestingly way.
One, two, one, two. There it is. My wife's an art therapist.
Oh, cool.
So whatever you do and say right now.
If you ever buy my sticker tape off, I'll give you a free sticker. We have a sticker that says "Peace through music" and one that says "Music is the weapon of the future."
That's awesome.
I'll give it to you. I have my
Thank you.
people on the promenade.
Oh my gosh, I think I've gotten stickers from you. Are you right by Urban Outfitters? Yeah.
We just got a
I see you every time I'm there.
You know, you guys are even the mayor
Oh, that's awesome.
just today. So if you want to sing at the event, let me know on Earth Day.
That would be awesome. Well, thank you.
All right. The pros here, so.
Yeah, you know, Dan Palm, obviously.
And that troubled man over there. So he's bringing passion, Dan's bringing entertainment. What am I bringing?
You're bringing the proclamation and
not you.
How do I turn this off again?
Oh, go back here to mic control. And if you're on, so there you go. And
All right, good evening, everyone. If we could all settle down. And a reminder that if you have your cellular device with you, please turn it to off or to vibrate. And also that if you are planning on speaking and have a PowerPoint presentation to show during public comment, we adopted new rules that those visual aids have to be submitted to the clerk's office before noon on the day of the council meeting. And with that, we will hear a report out on closed session from our city attorney.
Items 1B, 1E, and 1F were not discussed. Items 1A and 1C were discussed with no reportable action taken. Item 1D is the lawsuit of Shahirari versus the city. This litigation was brought after the plaintiff tripped and fell on a sidewalk uplift on Wilshire Boulevard, resulting in injuries and pain. The city disputes and denies the claim in the lawsuit. The city's attorney's office is recommending settlement in the amount of $85,000.
Move settlement. Second.
All right, move settlement for a total of $85,000 in that matter by Mayor Pro Tem Davis, second by Councilmember Himmerich. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember O'Connor?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Day?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmerich?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember Kuhn?
Yes.
And Mayor Winter.
Yes, so that passes unanimously. Is that the conclusion of your report?
It is.
It is. Okay. We're going to take a little mayoral prerogative here, and we're going to do 2C, which is recognition of interim police chief Kenneth Simcoe, before we go on to the two arts items, so that our various public and safety officials over here can go back to fighting crime and keeping our seats safe. So I'm going to move over to the podium. I got that on, good. So there's all this boilerplate whereas stuff, and this is going to look great hanging in Ken's bathroom. I'm not going to read it all. I mean, whereas Ken Simcoe is a dude of magnitude. Stepped into the fray when the police department needed guidance while we're between two different police chiefs, and did just an extraordinary job of reaching out to our community, working with the department, with city staff to do address at the time. You know, you came in at a tough time. You came in when we were all of a sudden having a big increase in homelessness and a big, you know, fairly significant increase of crime, and you were in the hot seat, and you did an incredible job, and I want to thank you so much for that. We understand you're going on to a next chapter in your life. We wish you all the best with that, and I'm going to give you this plaque, and then I want to give my colleagues an opportunity to speak, and the city manager as well. So congratulations, and we're so appreciative of all you've done for your many years of service to this city. So let's just start with the lefty, Kevin McEwen, and go all the way to the right.
Well, Ken, I just want to acknowledge that, you know, besides having been a wonderful interim chief, you have contributed to the public safety in this community in so many ways over so many years. And it has to be, must be 7 or 8 years ago now, that when we first did a Department of Emergency Preparedness, that you stepped into that role. So as we say thank you and good night to you, I just want everybody in Santa Monica to know you are literally safer in case of an earthquake or any other kind of disaster because of this man who put together a program that we have continued since you started it. So thank you for that. We all sleep better knowing what you've done for us.
I just want to say thank you. I had the opportunity to meet you some years back, and actually when you jumped into the role as the interim, after a few months, several people came up to me, not only from the neighborhoods, but just in general from the city staff, said, "You sure he doesn't want to be the chief?" And I said, "You know what? That's what I understand. That's why he took the position." He says, "We'll see what you can do to convince him." But in talking to you a couple of times about it, I respect you. I know you're moving on to some bigger and better things now in your life, and I really appreciate the time you did spend in the neighborhoods, because I know it came back tenfold for many of us on the council. Thanks.
Thank you.
And so my perspective is the homelessness perspective. As you know, I've only known you through the homelessness services you provided and the great discussions that I've seen you have with the community over the homelessness issues and the crime issues. And I just think you've been such a calming, wonderful influence on Santa Monica. I really appreciate everything you've done. And I didn't know you for very long, but I'm sorry to see you go. Thank you.
Well, Ken, we all are sorry to see you go, and I really just want to say how much we all wish you good and happiness and joy in your new endeavors. I just want to thank you, because I can't think of a harder job, maybe city manager, I don't know, it's a toss-up, but being the police chief in Santa Monica. And the reason is because we are such a relatively safe city that any amount of crime seems enormous to us, and we should take every crime seriously, and you really have. And I really appreciate your stepping in when Jackie left, but I also appreciate all the work you did in the years before. You have always been someone that has installed great confidence in the people in our city, made them feel that they were well protected, but more importantly, really made them feel that the police cared about them. And I think that's really important. That's what community policing is all about. And you've certainly been a real community police officer. So thanks for everything.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. And I would add, you know, the mayor mentioned that we are in the midst of a real community discussion going on right now around public safety, and your ability to step in and engage in that discussion, lead it in neighborhoods, in our business community, and everywhere that we're having this conversation right now is really an honor for me to watch and to learn from. And I want to thank you for that and wish you the best in your next step.
Thank you.
Hi there.
Hi there.
And well, we're a relatively safe city. You never know when an extreme situation will pop up. And you are there, and your staff and the folks, the sworn officers and other folks of the police department are there to step into that if something extreme happens. And I thank you for that. And also, I know that your job is 24/7. You're not in the office 24/7, but you're available 24/7. So I also want to thank your family.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I would like to ask for the privilege to talk a little more at length because of the debt that I owe Ken Semko as city manager. We have extraordinary talent in our police department, and extraordinary dedication in every rank, sworn and civilian. And to lead that department during the interim, I felt we needed a strong leader, but I also wanted to have a fair process. And so even though we had some great candidates who could have sat in the chief's chair, they were insisting that they wanted to have the right to apply for chief. Ken wanted that very badly. It would be the culmination of an extraordinary career, and he and many in the community and many in the department felt he would be the best choice to be chief of police. But he said to me, if you need me to step in, I'll put the department ahead of my interests, because that's what my career has been dedicated to. I thought, well, that's a nice thing for him to say, but I wasn't sure that he meant it. But he did. And he put this city and this department ahead of Ken Semko, as he's done for nearly 3 decades. And his family has stood beside him. He's a great father. It's probably the most important thing to him in his life, and I can understand that. But great fathers in the police department and great mothers in the police department go out and risk their lives every day, not to protect their children, but to protect other people's children, and the community. Very few people have worn the badge, the 101 Chief badge. It, I think, weighs the same as a captain's badge or a sergeant's badge or a patrol officer's badge, but the weight of responsibility is incalculably greater. Both Gleam and Pam have made reference to, when you step into the job of being police chief, it's not an 8 to 5 job, it's not a 5-day-a-week job, it's a 24/7 job, and you are in a fishbowl. Everything you do is subject to scrutiny, and everything the 450 people who work for you is under that scrutiny, and you're responsible for them every moment of every day in literally hundreds of thousands of encounters that take place. And when you pin on that badge, that's the responsibility that you carry until you take that badge off. Not when it's not something when you put your head down on the pillow, that responsibility doesn't go away. When you go off on vacation, that responsibility doesn't go away. That responsibility is there on your chest. And in addition to that responsibility, what Ken Semko has worn on his chest over these last 6 months is the passion that marked his career, passion for 21st century, constitutional, humane, smart policing, integrity, believing that you do the right thing no matter what, including giving a ticket to the woman you would later marry.
Heard about that, did you?
Now that's a meet cute if I ever heard of it.
And commitment, not just to the department and the community, but most of all commitment to the people who serve in the Santa Monica Police Department. It's an extraordinary group of people. They've been extraordinarily well represented by you as our chief, and I personally am deeply grateful for your willingness to step up and to wear that badge and to be the chief of this city. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. So if I may, I want to thank all of you. What an extraordinary leadership group that you are, and for the years of support that you've given our police department, and it's unwavering, and it's felt and it's appreciated. And Shakola for giving me the opportunity to serve this great city. It's the best city. I've traveled a lot. Best city I've ever seen. You have a police department where indifferent isn't in the vocabulary. They really, really care about you. They care about our community, and they're extremely talented. This isn't about me at all. I'm not great with the public recognition stuff. It's really about them and the men and women that aren't here, that are out there serving you right now. It's an incredible group that serves a fantastic community, and I've been honored and privileged for the last 27 years. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, now we'll move on to arts. Do you need to call the item 2A? I sort of skipped it with the chief, but.
So next we'll have the proclamation declaring April as Arts Month 2018.
All right, and is Luis here?
I am here.
Yeah, okay.
Are you going to say something?
I'm going to point out to the crowd that normally I read these really boring proclamations to increasingly just skip over, but you are actually going to perform some art, which is the contents of this proclamation. So the floor is yours, sir, and welcome.
Well, it's a collaboration because you know you have to do the last paragraph, right?
Oh, well then I'll be right here.
Okay.
Nobody told me that. Is this a SAG guild? Or?
Good evening, everyone. So it was a pleasure to write this. It was a joy to do research. For the last 9 weeks, I've been the writer in residence at the Santa Monica Annenberg Beach House, and I have had the time of my life. So it's wonderful to be able to pay it back in some way. And yes, whereas also shows up in this. Whereas art is the place of possibility. Oh, Santa Monica, wonderful, beautiful refuge. Sanctuary for the free spirit, the moneyed yogi and the poor poet, the Volvo-driven Montana street shopper and the bicycle pedaling student on Ocean Park Boulevard, the roofless denizen on 4th Street and the organic farmer's market chef, and everyone who ever wanted the freedom to breathe your clean, 10 degrees cooler than anywhere else air. You are the spirit of California and living proof that yoga works. Whereas art lives on the edge, you are the last stop on the western edge, beautifully and precariously sitting at the Pacific Rim, the tip at the edge of the world, original home of the Tongva people, a city of stories you have become. There is nowhere else to go once someone arrives in Santa Monica. Refuge, sanctuary, history. Whereas art is history. Even your name is mystery, beauty, and reverent. We can't decide how you came to be called Santa Monica. Was it Gaspar de Portola, who named you after the feast day of Saint Monica? Or was it Juan Crespi, who named you after a pair of springs that reminded him of the tears of Santa Monica? Can you debate this soon on a second or fourth Tuesday on KCRW? Whereas art is a sign. You are a welcoming Santa Monica, a billowing flag on the 10 freeway, a curve through a tunnel and discovery of palm tree, sky, and cliff. The elements of nature calling one back to our indigenous self. Whereas art is the home of artists. And to no one have you been nicer to than artists, the channelers, the interpreters, the translators of our culture, the poet, the painter, the dancer, the performance artist, the open micer, the DJ, and the folk singer on 3rd Street. You give refuge to those who give us a mirror of who we are. You gave Bertolt Brecht exile. Tennessee Williams wrestled his demons and wrote The Glass Menagerie on Ocean Avenue. Did you all know that? Charles Bukowski sipped drinks here. John Fante asked the dust. Raymond Chandler's alter ego, Philip Marlowe, solved murders in what we used to call Bay City. Wanda Coleman dug into the soul of a city. Santa Monica, you are the city of expression. Whereas art is personal history. Once, Santa Monica, I was a pimply-faced bartender at the Santa Monica Civic. Yes, I was. I popped open kegs for Alice Cooper, Black Sabbath, Motley Crue, amongst others. Afterward, I would walk down to the pier and dream of last stops on the big blue bus of success. I wrote poems on your streets, and I sang the song of the ocean breeze and air guitar. I thank you, Santa Monica, for the space to be and become. Whereas art is healing, Picasso once said that the purpose of art is washing the dust of daily life off our souls. Every day I ponder the creative spirit of this world city as I sit still on the rush hour going east. See, Santa Monica, you even give us meditation time. Whereas art is community. In this month, we celebrate the we and the us of our stories, the links that make us one city, when we rejoice in the collective force of goodwill and desire to make a better citizenry, when we come together to remember who we once were and who we are now and who we imagine we will be tomorrow. Santa Monica, you make the space for us to bang the drum circle, finish the mural, tell stories, and learn to fly the kite, if only to imagine ourselves weightless in space, in flight in your blue open sky. Whereas art is people. A city is only as good as its residents, and people are what make a story. Characters are what make feelings, and that's where art starts. People, emotion, story. Whereas art is about the weirdo. A city that honors its past, present, and future is health. A city that celebrates its people is a city of revolution. And a city that celebrates art and culture invites the black sheep and the weirdo, the loner with the chapbook, the guy who always has a song in his head, the seeming outsiders whose lives have been lived as poems, the ones who give back to ourselves to reflect on who we are, the dreamers. Whereas art is about tomorrow. May you never stop changing, Santa Monica. Long may you live.
Okay, that was poetic. This is now going to be the prosaic part. Now, therefore, I, Ted Winterer, Mayor of the City of Santa Monica, on behalf of the members of the City Council, do hereby proclaim that the City of Santa Monica believes that art and culture are essential to the lives of all of our citizens, and that expression in its most organic and truthful form makes for a healthy government built by and for the people. On this day, we proudly support the diversity of arts in Santa Monica and proclaim this Arts Month for all. So let's have a big hand. Are you guys getting this? Are we giving this proclamation to the commission? And if the clerk could call the next item, please.
Next, we have the City Manager Report, Arts Month, an ode to the arts and creativity in Santa Monica.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Shannon Doubt, the Cultural Affairs Manager, and thank you, Rick, for giving us your City Manager's report today. I will say thank you, Luis. That was so beautiful. We have copies of the poem that's available outside as you're leaving, so encourage you to take that with you. So, as Luis so articulately said, the arts build and strengthen our communities and help us see and interpret our world in new and different ways. The city's Cultural Affairs Division is very proud of its support for artists and arts organizations in Santa Monica. So tonight we thought that rather than tell you all about the wonderful things we do, we would show you the impact of some of our programs. For example, the Artists in Residence program that we have at the Beach House, as well as the Camera Obscura Art Lab. Our Artist Fellowship Grant, and our Downbeat 720 program at the Miles Playhouse, which is an open mic program for high school students. For over 16 years, Joe Hernandez-Kolsky has run this program, and he's here to tell you a little bit about it and introduce the artists. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. How are you? It is my great pleasure to introduce to you two fantastic artists. First of all, the Santa Monica Arts Fellow, Dan Kwong, and the one and only singer-songwriter Julia Paymer, who is a senior at Santa Monica High School. I get very verklempt thinking about it because that means we're going to lose her very soon. I have been running with my partners in crime, Joshua Silverstein, DJ Jedi, Mike Riley, and Justin Yoff over at the Miles Playhouse, Downbeat 720 for over 16 years. For every second and fourth Tuesday of the month, we create a safe and supportive space for all of the high school youth in the city of Santa Monica and the city of LA at large. It's just my great pleasure to have this opportunity to continue to be reminded of how important the arts are to our kids and giving them a safe space to share it. It is with great pleasure I introduce to you to Miss Julia Paymer and Dan Kwong.
So this is a song that I wrote, and what is your poem entitled?
The Healing Blade.
All right, so he's going to be saying a poem called The Healing Blade, and I will be singing a song I wrote called Wherever I Go. And thank you guys for this opportunity, and we hope you enjoy. I haven't seen the sunset in a while, but I've got everything I need. I've got a city waiting for me, and I've got people here who love me, and I've got people who adore me. I haven't seen the ocean lately. No, I haven't touched the orange sky, and I've never lived anywhere else, and nobody's tried to change my mind. But how do I leave the people who raised me? How do I learn to live alone? And how do I know which house to walk into when no one else picks up the phone? And are the skies this beautiful wherever I go?
My father died September 21st, 2016. Complications from surgery. Anesthesia shut down his kidneys, and if you can't pee, you die pretty quick. Took about a week as his body slowly poisoned itself. Not fun to watch. Sam Kwong died peacefully at home, in his bed. But actually, I lost my father much earlier than that. By my reckoning, the defining moment came in the 8th grade. Father and son night. Spaghetti dinner with Jell-O in the school cafeteria, followed by a lame speech by a PE teacher. After dinner, I walked Dad around campus. Here's where my electric shop class is. Oh, here's my drafting class. He looks utterly bored. Doesn't say a damn thing. What's new? He never has much to say anyways, unless he's pissed off. Now, it's just silent. Both of us, awkward and uncomfortable, and all I can think is, this was a terrible mistake. I watch other boys walking around with their dads, and I wonder, what's a father supposed to feel like? I can't remember. Flash forward a few decades or so, long enough to know better. Now in his early 80s, Dad is starting to show signs of dementia. Can't remember from 5 minutes ago. Constantly repeating himself, confused, depressed. He loses all sense of purpose. His daily mantra? I don't know what the hell I'm hanging around for. Things only go downhill from there. And it takes such a toll on his third marriage that once again divorce is the solution. February 2016. I take Dad from his beloved home in Walla Walla, Washington, to come live with me in Santa Monica. I become his primary caregiver. First thing, get him off the psychiatric drugs. Next, get him into living. I do the laundry, he vacuums. I shop, he pushes the cart. I cook, he does the dishes. Sometimes he cooks too, and even though dementia makes it hard to remember recipes, his stir-fry always tastes better than mine. I drag him around to rehearsals, board meetings, performances, anything to get him out of the house and into contact with people. We bask in the late afternoon sun at Tongva Park. watch the sunset from the Palisades. On a warm summer night, me and Dad ride the Ferris wheel under a full moon. His face beaming as bright as the moon, he turns to me and says, "Thank you for taking me in. You're a good person, and I'm not just saying that because you're my son." I reach for his hand. He's reluctant at first, but then he welcomes it. And something familiar begins to stir inside. Months go by, and the man I had learned to live in fear of smiles at me every morning. The man who could no longer embrace his son hugs me every night before bed. And then one day it hits me like a bolt of lightning. I remember, this is what a father feels like.
I haven't seen my best friend in a while, and she lives just 7 blocks down. Well, I used to run way down to her house, and we'd play and swim and make believe and dream about leaving this town. Well, I don't know if I'm scared or just losing my mind, but all I know is I am thankful that this is the town I leave behind. So maybe bye is not a fragile word, maybe it's just a see you soon. And all these moments that I hope to keep are piled up in my childhood room. And I will not forget my sacred days when everything was pink and gold. And all those times I swore I'd never change. No, I would never grow old. But are the skies this beautiful wherever I go?
Well, thank you all for that. That was wonderful. It's going to be really hard to even think about going into our much more pedestrian business for the rest of the evening, but I guess we will slog through it after the inspiration. This is the moment where the clerk will ask if any council members have any reports on travel. And I'll remind you, before she asks, that last meeting there was an award for the most concise report. For those of you who are absent, Mayor Pro Tem Davis won a spectacular chocolate bar.
It was delicious.
Now, as I said last time, there will not necessarily be a prize anytime every meeting for the shortest report on travel, but you never know. So now we ask that question.
Does anyone have anything to report on travel since the last meeting?
Councilmember O'Connor.
Right, just quickly, I participated in the Water Alliance, a consortium of cities in western United States. It was held in Salt Lake City. Actually, I didn't use any city travel funds to participate, but it was an interesting session of cities talking about the issues about water supply, water safety, and resiliency.
That is very well done. Councilmember Vasquez.
I'll try to be short. Since I wasn't at the last meeting, I did attend actually several conferences since the last time I was here. In the one of them was the National League of Cities, which I think some of the members here also attended. Just wanted to mention that. And actually dovetailed into that, I was able to also participate in the NALEO, which we're a city's a member of as well. Just got elected to their board, which is the National League of Latino Elected Officials. And then, of course, I participated in the Local Government Commission up here in Yosemite. And then most recent in Sacramento, I went to the WELL conference, which is a water conference. The water conference and the NALEO were both taken care of by the respective organizations. The other two were on city travel.
Councilmember O'Day.
I also attended the Local Government Commission, as reported by other council members, and that's all I have to report.
All right, that was very well done. So there actually is no prize this evening, but there.
Wait a minute.
But there could be in any meeting in the future. So I'll just remind you of that. So thank you for that. And the clerk could call the consent calendar, please.
The consent calendar. All items will be considered and approved in one motion unless removed by a council member for discussion, and you have 4 requests to speak.
All right, and we'll hear from the public first. We'll start with Michael Myers, followed by Walter Meyer. Oh, John Geary, okay. And Denise Barton. Welcome, Mr. Myers.
Pretty special to be here tonight on Arts Month, and thank you guys for your support of the arts in Santa Monica. I echo former Chief Semko in saying that it is a pleasure to do anything in Santa Monica, and we're so lucky to have the support that we have. The Ruskin is a proud arts tenant at the Santa Monica Airport, and I don't need to tell you guys about the complications of the land use elements that go on there. And one of the reasons we've been able to stay, even through, things like the consent decree, which stipulate that everybody has to be at market, is that the buildings aren't in very good shape. We understand that there are concerns. In light of the limitations imposed by the consent decree, we're concerned about the $756,000 being allocated to assess 9 buildings at the airport, many of which house artists. And part of that is because we think we know what the reports are going to tell you. Which is that a lot of those buildings are going to be really prohibitive to bring to code. And so while we understand that you need to do it, we would just implore you to proceed with caution. We would also ask that you guys start looking at ways to kind of find proactive solutions to deal with the limitations we have with our own land. So if you replace a building, you wouldn't be able to charge them below market rents until after the airport closes. And while that will be a great day in 2027, we're worried about what happens between now and 2027. We all want to stay there, and we really appreciate your support, but we would just please implore you to proceed with caution. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer?
Hi there. It's an honor to be here tonight. Who knew this city council meeting could be so amazing? I'd love to see that if we have rights to it or get the permissions on our website, because that was absolutely fantastic. It's really a testament to what our city is and that we are happy people and happy city. So I'm a former arts commissioner, former vice chair of the commission, and former chair of the public art committee. I live in Santa Monica. I work here at Santa Monica College. I teach art history. My 3 children go to public school here, and my wife is not here tonight, but she's a tenant at the airport. She's an artist at 2900, and she was one of the original builders who leased the land from the city and started building out those studios, and has since sort of been cultivating in many ways the tenants there and the arts uses, and been an advocate. And so when we saw this consent agenda item, I think just to echo some of Mike Meyer's concerns that oftentimes with good intentions, there are unforeseen consequences, and that the ecology of that airport is part of the reason why we decided when we got married to rent in Santa Monica rather than buy somewhere else, was because of that studio and the city itself and its support of the arts. And so we just want to say that, not to be alarmist, but oftentimes there's sort of de facto consequences of things that you then create an environment that artists are kicked out of their studios for renovation or because of something that is seen as detrimental or a safety issue. And just to call into question, like, when things come up, it's always a concern of, like, why now for this as opposed to some other time, and the choice to then look at the safety issues today. So we just want to just be the voice of caution as this moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Geary?
Hello, I'm happy to be here tonight. Thank you all. I'm here to just echo what they said. I'm also a tenant at the airport 2900 building as an artist, and it's invaluable to me. It's a big part of my life, and I just want to make sure that it is respected, and hopefully it continues as uninterrupted as possible. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Barton?
Good evening. Let's start with items 3B and 3D. I see the cost for the Big Blue Bus has become excessive for the residents of the city, resulting from decreased service for the residents due to service focusing on the Expo line and serving so many other new cities. And again, hasn't the bus ridership been dropped under Francine Stephan's stewardship? As well as just look at your transportation demand management plan, where everybody will get out of their cars and use public transportation. But when residents did that, you reduced local service for the Big Blue Bus, making it inconvenient again. So you forced people to start using their cars again, or was that the plan all along? Next, I have to question Santa Monica College having classrooms at the airport. I have to ask, wouldn't that normally be seen as a hazard, possibly for students and staff? What if you have another airplane crash at the airport? And is it even allowed by the state? And since the city has a history of significantly underestimating traffic and parking, as the Bergamot Station project, where 700 new daily car trips was estimated by the city, when the EIR said it would be more like 7,000 new daily car trips. So I see the parking to be lacking as well. Then there's another assessment of the buildings at the airport, which really makes one wonder how many of them will be found to need to be torn down and rebuilt higher. Finally, one would hope that with your expensive new computerized staff training tool, that it will equate to less city staff necessary to train city staff. Because if you need new city staff to do this, I would really definitely say the cost is running our local government is excessive to the residents, just like the Big Blue Bus. And Rick Cole's management style does seem to be a lot like Lamont Ewell. Sit back, be publicly seen, and let everybody else do the work. I say this because of how many written things I've submitted with no response, or maybe to the city I'm not good enough for a written response. Thank you.
Councilmember, that concludes the public input. Does anybody wish to pull any item for discussion? All right. Seeing no interest in that,
I'll move the consent calendar.
Second.
All right, motion for the entirety of the consent calendar by Councilmember McEwen, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Davis. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember O'Connor?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Day?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmelrich?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember McCune?
Yes.
And Mayor Winter?
Yes, so the consent calendar has been approved unanimously. Could the clerk call the next item on the agenda, please?
Next, we have item 7A, which is a second reading and adoption of an interim zoning ordinance, extending interim zoning ordinance number 2569, which amended portions of the Santa Monica Municipal Code section 9.07.030 to revise development standards for maximum parcel coverage, maximum building height, additional minimum setback for upper stories, limitations on aggregated floor area and upper story decks and balconies, and exclusion of certain accessory dwelling units from parcel coverage in the R1 single unit residential district.
Move adoption.
Second.
All right, deja vu all over again. Moved by Councilmember McEwen, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Davis. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Councilmember Kim?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmelrich?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Day?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connor?
Yes.
And Mayor Winter.
I was going to say, suddenly feeling horribly disenfranchised.
Sorry.
Yes. So that passes unanimously. And with that, if the clerk can get caught up, we can call item 8A.
Item 8A is Master Facility Use Agreement with the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District, and you have 5 requests to speak.
Great. Let's see, we have Ms. Ginsburg for the staff report. Welcome.
But, Mayor, if I may.
Oh, yes, this is that traditional
This
moment.
is that time.
Yes.
I jumped in and moved 2 items in a row because I wanted to at least be here for some purpose. I have to leave the room now because for the last almost 25 years, it's been my pleasure to work for the school district. And to avoid any appearance of a conflict of interest, it has always been my policy to recuse myself on items where the city will be providing funding to the school district. So I'll do so tonight and be back when you're done.
All right. Maybe you can give me a report on the Yankee Red Sox game. All right, welcome, Ms. Ginsburg.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Tonight we're here to talk with you about the Master Facilities Use Agreement with the school district. This is not working. Thank you. There are currently 2 use agreements and associated supplemental agreements with SMMUSD to provide for community use of district facilities during non-school hours, and both general fund revenues and Measure YY revenues are provided to the school district per the terms of these agreements. The current Master Facilities Use Agreement was authorized by the Council in May 2012 for an initial 10-year term through June 30th, 2022, with an option to extend for an additional 5 years to June 30th, 2027. Use agreements related to this master facility agreement are for CREST, the Playground Partnership Program, John Adams Middle School, and Lincoln Middle School. Measure Y and YY were passed by Santa Monica voters in November of 2010. Measure Y established a 0.5% transaction and use tax. An advisory measure, YY, recommended that half of the tax revenues from Measure Y be used to support Santa Monica school, educational, and after-school programs. To effectuate Advisory Measure YY, in May 2011, the Council approved entering into a Samo High Master Facilities Use Agreement and a supplemental program agreement with the school district for use of Samo High facilities when school is not in session. Measure GSH and GS were approved by Santa Monica voters in November 2016. Measure GSH established another 0.5% transaction and use tax. An advisory measure GS recommended that half of the transaction and use tax revenue be used to improve and maintain Santa Monica's public schools and support educational and after-school programs at the district's facilities in Santa Monica. To effectuate the will of the voters, staff is proposing to replace the Samo High Master Facilities Use Agreement with a single agreement covering measures YY and GS. The agreement would cover recreational use of Samo High and memorialize the long-standing community use of Los Amigos Park. The proposed term would be for 10 years through June 2028, with 10-year extensions by mutual agreement between the school board and the city council. The agreement would contain a provision to clarify if SMMUSD were to split into 2 districts, the funding provided through Measure YY and GS would reside with the entity with jurisdiction over Samo High and Los Amigos Park. The agreement would also contain a provision to address obligations of each party should there ever be a major unanticipated natural or human-caused disaster. The city's projection for half of the combined Measure YY and GS funds is $16,100,000 $100,000, although the final amount is based on actual transaction and use tax revenue received over the course of the year. The supplemental agreements for Crest, Playground Partnership, JAMS, and Lincoln Middle Schools would be revised to make the terms of these agreements consistent with the term language in the Master Facility Agreement, extending them through June 30th, 2022, with a 5-year extension option to June 30th, 2027. And all supplemental agreements, including those for Samo High and Los Amigos Park, would include provisions to address permit group and general community use of the sites during non-school hours, staffing by the district or city as determined by the particular site needs, the process for collecting permit fees, and custodial and maintenance needs. Staff recommends that the Council authorize the City Manager to negotiate and execute Measure YY and GS Facilities Use Agreement, including related supplemental terms and conditions for the use of Samo High and Los Amigos Park with the school district with an initial term ending on June 20th, 2028. That concludes the staff report. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions of Ms. Ginsburg? Ms. Davis?
Thank you, Ms. Ginsburg. So I just want to make sure I'm clear. By combining the YNYY with the GSHGS, we're actually extending YNYY longer than we would based on the original contract
That's
we had.
correct.
Is that correct? So they're now on the same timetable as
That's
well.
correct.
And in terms of the conditions that are in the contract, now those are equal between the two measures, since the two measures function essentially the same. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we've harmonized what might have been the differences. Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, that will do it for now, but don't go anywhere. Okay. And now we'll hear from the public. We'll hear first from Denise Barton for 1 minute, and then for 2 minutes, Sherry Davis, Richard DeVilder and Jess Wine, and Nikki Kohlhoff, and Ann Thanawala.
Good evening. My first question, did Malibu vote for GS and YY? If so, why would they be wanting to give away all of their share for Santa Monica High School and Los Amigos Park? Second question, how did GS and YY go from being 0.25% of 0.5% to 1%? I have to question the math. Please refer to the bottom of page 2 and the top of page 3 in the staff report. As well as what kind of financial practice is it to say we have just over $21 million in GS and YY funds, but we need just over $25 million to pay it all. So the city is going to open the general fund to match the amount the city has held back from Malibu for the agreement. Finally, in the original agreement, see section C, periodic adjustments based on facility use and revenue. Then put that together with all the recitals on page 1, especially item H, makes this whole thing look really shady. Thank you.
Ms. Davis?
Good evening, Mayor Winter, Mayor Pro Tem Davis, council members, and City Manager Cole. My name is Sherry Davis, and for 12 of the last 15 years, I've chaired Community for Excellent Public Schools, a band of education advocates, very broad cross-section of our community, all of whom volunteer a lot of time and have done a lot of work over that period of time. In addition to my work as the co-chair or chair of SEPS, I've also been PTA Council President, and I've been a very active member of 13 campaign committees, 4 of which I chaired. So I've been very involved in this issue for a long time. On behalf of the SEPS Steering Committee, SEPS of course standing for Community for Excellent Public Schools, I urge you to support the recommended action on the Master Facility Use Agreements with the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District. Santa Monica has uniquely supported various methods of generating local revenue for our public schools. GSH and GS and YNYY, the ballot measures that are key to item 8A, truly reflect the collaborative spirit that exists between the City of Santa Monica and the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District. As the original instigators, SEPS, over the past 14 years, has carefully followed and monitored how the different agreements are structured and are being implemented. We believe the terms for this latest iteration are fair and reflect sound interpretation of the public policy created with the ballot measures. We are very grateful to all involved, especially the voters who showed such willingness to tax themselves to ensure high-quality public schools in our community. In addition to the $16 million in this agreement, of course, we have the additional $9 million. Thank you to the staff for their hard work on creating these terms, and we really hope that you'll vote yes for the staff recommendation. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Winterer, Mayor Pro Tem Davis, honorable members of the City Council, and City Manager Rick Cole. My name is Richard Tevilder and Jeswin. I have the great honor at this time to serve as the current president of the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District. I'm here tonight to support the recommendation on your agenda, the Master Facilities Use Agreement with the School District, Item 8A. Our board's leadership team, along with our superintendent, Dr. Ben Drotti, are grateful for the good work that our two staffs have engaged in to arrive upon this agreement, an agreement that benefits our entire community, and especially the community of the youngest folks in our city, our 11,000 students. The partnership we have forged, the city, the school district, and the voters of Santa Monica, is an exemplary one, and one that should be celebrated and should be actually all Santa Monicans should be quite proud of. I hope you will approve the item tonight. I fully support it. I'm grateful for it being on your agenda this evening, and the full school board will take this matter up this coming Thursday night. Now that I've said that, I also have to say I'm really glad that I came tonight on Arts Proclamation Night and the Ode to the Arts. It was incredible. And Ms. Paymer went to preschool with my child at EYS, Early Years School. And I just said to her father, David, you must be so proud. That was an incredible performance. And so I am so happy that I was here to witness that. Thank you very much.
Don't go on. I got a question for you. So we got some emails that suggested that the city was somehow holding the district hostage in the discussions about this agreement that's before us this evening, or this idea of an agreement. Did you at any time feel you're being held hostage?
I did not, and I would say that's the furthest thing from the truth. In actuality, I said in meeting with the mayor pro tem, and city staff, along with our city staff and our leadership team, that it was an incredible experience of collaboration, and it was one of those moments which I wish everybody in the community could see, because it was good governance as it unfolded, and it's just simply that, good governance. And I would like to say that it was at our request, the school district leadership team and the superintendent, that we asked for the placement on your agenda, the past agenda that sadly you couldn't take up, I think, because you didn't have quorum. And the fact that it's on our April 12th agenda was by our design, school district design.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Kohlhoff.
Nikki Kohlhoff, Santa Monica resident, SMMUSD parent. Do not enter into these joint use agreements. The voters had no expectations that there would be strings attached to this ballot measure. It read, should half of its revenue be used to improve and maintain local public schools, including attracting and retaining high-quality teachers, expanding access to preschools, at-risk students, and improving technology, arts, music, math, and science. Also, no mention of after-school programs as misrepresented by staff, which was done in 2 instances. The after-school programs are not part of the school money. They were part of the fire and police money from YY. So please stop misrepresenting that. PTA Council study, of which Sherry Davis, who spoke earlier, is an advisor, described YY and said that council put into effect that subsequent city councils have allocated the resulting revenue in accordance with the wishes of the voters and did not make any mention of subsequent strings attached either. We understand this is advisory, but you all endorsed it, so we expect you to follow through with no strings attached. We keep hearing that there is a need for consideration, but we don't see any basis for this. The state constitution prohibits gifts, but there is a giant exception for public purpose, and that is well established by case law. Education of our kids is a public purpose, and let's remember we mean public purpose for us, not the city's interest. And we're a charter city, so some of those rules don't even apply to us, and we couldn't find anything about it in our charter. And if you still think consideration is required, we think you're taking advantage of our kids by what you're asking for. You could have said educating our kids is the consideration in response for this money. After all, you're giving SMC free rent for $0 for 55 years in exchange for educating 110 kids. I would think 11,000 is a better deal. Or you could say thank you for busting your butts and getting you guys the other $8 million a year you get for affordable housing. That would work too. So also the state funding formula changed, so there's no cap on what you can give the schools. So I'm asking you to say no and submit the field to the Coastal Commission. Thank you.
Ms. Thanawala?
Hello, Ann Thanawala, public school parent, and I am really opposed to this joint use or this agreement here because of the fact that you're saying that it effectuates the will of the voters. That's not what I voted for. That is not what most of the voters believe. They voted for a deal that was requiring the school district to provide their facilities to the city. That's just wrong, and I think there could be a class action there against that because, as Nikki had said, we are a charter city. There is case law. In fact, Ben Allen, now Senator Ben Allen and chair of our Senate Education Committee, had cited on the dais when he was a school board member in 2011 that there was case law that indicated that this was okay, no strings attached. And the fact of the matter is that because Jerry Brown implemented LCFF, local control funding formula, any other case law no longer is relevant. And that case law, Madison versus Oakland Unified School District, still stands. So to say that it is necessary to have this agreement is just wrong. The other thing is the deal allows the city not to provide field space to 4 of our 7 neighborhoods, which in those 4 neighborhoods resides the majority of our kids ages 0 to 18. So if you're talking about sustainability and you want us to walk everywhere, why aren't you putting play spaces in our neighborhoods so that we don't have to drive to the furthest end of Santa Monica in order for our kids to kick a ball around? In addition to that, this agreement, just for the public access for our kids that are grade schools, says that if you have more than 10 kids, for instance, more than 10, a couple of families get together and they want to have a game on the field at their own school, they can't do it without paying and having a city permit. That is just wrong. You guys need to be looking at this, and I know you didn't get those attachments, but this is what that deal is about, and you didn't look at it because you didn't receive it. But this is just wrong.
Thank you, Ms. Thanawala. Council members, we have one late chit.
1 minute. I move for 1 minute.
All right, anybody object? In that case, we'll hear from Oscar De La Torre for 1 minute.
Good evening, Mayor Winter, members of the City Council and staff. My name is Oscar De La Torre, resident of the Pico neighborhood, father of 2 children, and a member of the school board. And I just wanted to say that I've received a lot of information from constituents in the community who are concerned that we're rushing to make a decision. I would hope that we would have a little bit more time to look at the legal issues that have been brought up in terms of why we need to rush into making this decision. And if we can have a more in-depth public process. I mean, the school board's taking this up on Thursday, and we're just, a few days back from spring break. Parents haven't really had an opportunity to reflect and to look at all the details. There's been a lot of information coming to us, and I think it'd be great if we had a little bit more time, as a discussion item for us at least, so that we can go ahead and look into the legalities and all the issues that are coming forward right now. Thank you.
There's some questions, Council Member. Oh, Mayor Pro Tem Davis, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. So are you asking us to vote no tonight?
Well, what I would ask you to do is to have a discussion item, to discuss the item today, but to not have a vote until the school board has an opportunity to discuss it as well.
But-
So I'm not saying to vote no. I'm saying that we need more public process to make this decision.
But you understand that the school board asked us to vote before it comes to the school board, so they know that we voted in favor of it, right?
Well, I just found out about that today, but my position would be that we would hold off on a vote today and have a better opportunity for us to review the legal issues involved and
So you're asking us to vote no tonight and bring it back at another time.
No, I'm asking you to postpone a vote.
So that means the money can't go to the district. You understand that, right?
Well, the thing is that's a question that I have as well, is like, why are we holding on to the money? Why I need to understand those legal issues. I haven't had a time to digest all that information. That's for myself.
Okay.
And that's what I'm asking, is more time to really understand these legal issues that you probably know better than I do. I haven't had a chance to look at that.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
And we have another late chit, council members.
We have to hear for 1 minute.
Okay, Dr. Drotti, where'd he go? Welcome, sir.
Yeah.
And
thank you. How you doing?
Good.
My apologies for being late. I ran here from another meeting, so I wanted to come up here as superintendent just to first offer my appreciation for the agreement that we came to with the city. I understand there's a lot of misinformation out there just with the agreement that we have in place. We plan to put this on the agenda for Thursday and actually go very slowly in explaining how the agreement came to be. I'm very impressed with the work that you guys have done on all these years in putting together agreements that involved the two different measures that we have, and also the facility use agreement. And this process really allowed me to understand the history of how those things came to be. So the more I learned about it, the more impressed I became just about how the city and the community are able to work together in such a way. And I've been to many different cities in different capacities in education, and this has been very impressive. So a lot of people were involved in this process, unlike what you would see out there in the social media. Our legal counsel, as well as your legal counsel, and the members of the community that were involved in the original YY agreement and all the other agreements that have been in the past. So we'll take our time in explaining all of that at our board meeting, and if I was a betting person, I think you'll get a vote for the agreement.
Thank you, Dr. Drotti. And Mayor Pro Tem Davis has a question for you.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for coming down and running over here. In that case, okay, now establish some order here. So that concludes the public input, and I believe Councilmember Himmerich was first in the queue for a question of staff.
So I have a question for the city attorney. We've heard a lot about how this is illegal, et cetera. I wonder what your take on this is, please.
Yes, so the city attorney's office has looked at this, and I should say my view on this is the same as City Attorney Marsha Moutry. We do believe that these agreements are necessary to effectuate the will of the voters. The primary legal point I want to address is just the Madsen versus Oakland Unified School District 1975 case. The two things I would point out about that case are it was a 1975 case, which is pre-Serrano versus Priest, which is a key case in this area, but also it upheld a one-time transfer of $700,000 from Oakland's general fund to the Oakland Unified School District to meet an unexpected deficit in the Oakland District General Fund created by sharply declining attendance. So it was a very different situation than the one we encounter here, where we're talking about effectuating the will of the voters in a multi-million-dollar agreement over a very long period of time. So we do believe these two things are entirely distinguishable. We believe that these agreements are both necessary and appropriate to effectuate the will of the voters, and I'm happy to answer further questions.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
So my questions for staff, Ms. Ginsburg? So I just want to confirm that, so among the provisions in the agreements, and the city attorney can chime in and clarify if necessary. So, for example, one of them is a payment schedule that sets forth when we will provide payments to the district. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And there are also provisions within the contract, for example, that put certain requirements on the desire of either party who might want to terminate or modify the contract.
That is correct.
So that, for example, if the city wanted to reduce its contribution, it would have to show that certain things had occurred and then have to negotiate with the district. Is that correct?
Yeah, there are meet and confer provisions.
And this would go then to the city attorney. If we didn't have a contract, there would be no set schedule upon which we had to pay the district. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And if, for example, we had no contract and simply budgeted that, we at any time, without any notice or meet and confer with the district, could in fact just decide to not give the district the money. Not that we would ever do that, but the point is the district would have no contractual protection about our ability to do that.
That's correct. The measures were advisory. This council has not treated them as advisory in the sense that it has always been the intent of the city to transfer the funds and to find the mechanism to do that. But there would be no legal requirement that the city do that outside of the agreements. And certainly the agreements are important as well to our CFO and otherwise to ensure that there is public transparency around how the funds will be distributed.
All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Vasquez.
Just to follow up on the Serrano versus Priest case you mentioned, prior to that, we didn't have to have any kind of an MOU because there was no funding restrictions. Is that correct?
I think gift of public funds for in this particular situation would have still been a concern. As I mentioned, the amounts here and the length of time are very different from the Oakland case.
But I thought Serrano versus Priest had specific legal language that doesn't allow you to just give, because what was happening before, you were having people, especially wealthy districts like Beverly Hills, they were just opened up their checkbooks and gave whatever they want to the school district.
So you're absolutely right that Serrano versus Priest changed the landscape of school finance law in California and elsewhere.
But as a result of that, that's when we had to establish MOUs, right?
That gets a little bit more complicated because the law has changed somewhat from Serrano versus Priest, so I can't say that alone dictates all of the law to follow, but I would say that certainly that it is a key case with respect to the school finance piece, but also that the Oakland situation, the gift of public funds issue would have been an issue before and after Serrano versus Priest.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
All right. Well, as someone who's been deeply involved in this issue for a very long time, I want to say that I do not want to go back to the dark days prior to the adoption of the Facilities Master Use Agreement, where every year at the same time the education community would have to motivate itself to come here and beg the city for one-time money. And that happened year after year after year. And that money was allocated without an agreement, which meant that in the next year we had to come back and beg again. And one of the results of not having a written agreement was that there was no certainty as to the funding. And that's one of the important things about these agreements, is not only they do provide funding, but they provide certainty as to the amount at the time of payment, which is key to letting the school district plan. The school district was always hampered by the fact that one-time monies did not allow it to plan. You can't set up a program, hire personnel, when you know you're only going to, or your certainty is only for 1 year. So I am so proud of this city and the collaboration over the years, that we are unique in the fact that this city not only collaborates with the school district, but takes money from the general revenue fund that, yes, was raised through the efforts of people in the education community as well as outside the education community. We worked together to raise these funds, both for our city and for our schools. And I think we should all be immensely proud of that. I think that the sense that there's some underground conspiracy here is absolutely preposterous. There is never been any indication that anyone on the city council has ever done anything to try and withhold money from the schools. And these agreements protect the school district as much, if not more, than they protect the city council. And so with that, I'd like to move the staff recommendation.
All right, motion by Mayor Pro Tem Davis, second by Councilmember Vasquez. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we will have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember O'Connor?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Day?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmelrich?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
And Mayor Winter?
Yes, so that passes unanimously 6-0. City Manager has something to say?
Mayor, I just wanted to say, first of all, the teams on both sides worked very hard to respect the historic precedents that had been worked out going back even before Measure YY, and building on the partnership. And a lot of work went into this. But neither Superintendent Dradi nor I were involved in those earlier days. And I want to personally thank him and his team for the open-handed and collaborative communication. We had some misunderstandings at the very beginning. We made some proposals that we thought would move the ball forward, and people felt, no, we need to stick within the lines that had already been drawn, and that made sense to us, and so we moved forward. So Ben, thank you for you and your team. You worked very hard on this, and we really appreciate the collaborative spirit, and we will continue to work in that spirit on our side, and know you will as well.
All right, that concludes that item, and Councilmember McKeown has made a timely return to the dais, so could the clerk call item 8B, please?
Item 8B is the annual review of development agreement compliance, and you have 2 requests to speak.
Welcome, Ms. Tanamori.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Roxanne Tanamori, Principal Planner with PCD. This item provides staff's annual report on development agreement compliance for the 33 properties with agreements currently in effect and subject to annual reporting and monitoring requirements. Of the 33 properties with agreements in effect, 23 have been built, 5 projects are under construction, and 5 have not yet begun construction. Based on review of these agreements, it is recommended that Council determine good faith compliance for all 23 properties that are in compliance, as outlined and detailed more fully in your staff report. One important component of staff's ongoing annual monitoring is review of Transportation Demand Management Program compliance. This is an item that we typically focus on each year in front of this council. And as outlined on the slide, this year Crossroads School and the ArcLight Theater achieved full compliance with their respective average vehicle ridership targets. Staff is also working with 3 properties that are implementing additional transportation demand management measures to achieve their peak hour AVR targets identified in each agreement. These properties are Colorado Center, Providence St. John's Health Center, and St. Monica's Catholic Community. And also, as outlined on the slide, just to give you the universe of properties, there are currently 6 projects that have been constructed that do have AVR targets in effect, and there are 7 additional where their AVR targets are not yet in effect, either due to timing, particularly due to timing requirements as outlined in each of their respective agreements. So in future years, we will be reporting on more and more of these properties. These additional plan measures that will be required for the 3 properties will be formulated and are being formulated based on staff's review of the property's AVR survey results, including the current mode split and employee commute data that's submitted to the city each year. Staff is continuing to work closely with Providence on its current survey methodology as described in greater detail in the report in order to better capture its non-traditional schedules and its 7-day-a-week operations. New measures for all 3 of these properties will be geared to reduce single occupancy vehicle trips and incentivize different travel behavior through the participation in the citywide TMO, more effective employee outreach, increasing parking cash out consistent with state law, And for larger properties, we're looking to evaluate the feasibility of partnering with other sites to retain microtransit commuter shuttle service such as Chariot to serve those employees and employees of neighboring properties. We're looking for opportunities in particular in the office park and adjacent to the Bergamot Transit Center as well. In terms of next steps, staff will be finalizing the TDM program modifications that are outlined in your staff report with these 3 properties, and will be providing its annual report to council during the first quarter of 2019. And with that, I'd be happy to answer your questions. There are a lot of properties outlined in your attachment A, and happy to focus in on any properties that you have questions about. Thank you.
Any questions of staff? I have a quick one. So in past years, we've had particular troubles with one development agreement where the tenant had actually had a requirement for an AVR target they're unable to meet, and they have left that property. I'm talking about where Genesis used to be.
That's correct.
Has a new tenant moved in there yet?
Not yet. Thank you for raising that. I can give a very brief description of what's presented in your staff report. So that's correct. In last year's annual report to council, there was some disagreement on whether good faith compliance was being exercised with respect to the 1800 Stewart property. Following council's annual review, staff went back to the table with the applicant and began to work with them, and they did in fact make a good faith effort to begin implementing the TDM plan that is required for their AVR requirement. Following the announcement in July of 2017 of Estella/Agensis winding down operations at that site, staff did begin its due diligence in meeting with prospective tenants and owners to make sure that it's understood what the requirements are going forward. So the property is under contract right now. It's expected to close later this week, in fact. And we have begun to meet with them to ensure that all of the obligations and requirements of the DA are well understood.
Yeah. So just to be clear, so those obligations carry with the property, not with the tenant. So a future tenant was well aware, and they will
absolutely
be held to the same standards. Terrific. Thanks. Councilmember Heinrich, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a quick overriding question. So when you talk about good faith compliance, how do you decide? I mean, what makes you say there are good faith efforts to comply or not?
Well, as outlined in the staff report, we do always consider that. While the term is not specifically defined in the ordinance, we generally refer to good faith compliance as demonstration by the developer and subject to staff's review of the materials and site inspections and whatever needs to be done to demonstrate that the developer is meeting its requirements with respect to existing regulations or any regulations that are set forth in the development agreement. That's something that an annual report is required, and staff works on that year-round. The standard is not black and white, but it is based on the whole of the activities the developer is engaging in and our review of that.
So when I look at some of these numbers, I see that some AVRs are moving in the right direction and others are moving in the wrong direction. So if you have if you have a development agreement where it's moving in the wrong direction, I mean, do you work with them throughout the year to try to move them in? And I'm talking particularly about St. John's, which is moving in the wrong direction, right? Their AVR is going down, not up.
Okay, so to tackle the
But
first
there are
part of that
others, too. I
question,
mean,
we do work with these properties year-round. It's something we're in constant communication, I'd say on a monthly or bi-monthly basis, to ensure that the TDM program is being implemented. Each of these properties, they have a dynamic operation going on. Their employee base is changing. Our transportation options are changing. Our TMO is expanding its reach. So there's always something that we're interacting with these property owners and tenants. And so, yes, we are working with them, not just during a compressed annual review period, but year-round. And secondly, in terms of looking at those numbers, as we've tried to outline in the report, the numeric AVR targets, underlying those numbers is a whole host of factors, including, in particular with respect to St. John's, that survey methodology that has been challenging. It is a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week operation with shifts that do not match up with peak periods where the bulk of the employees are coming and going in some cases. And so trying to capture that travel behavior outside of the peak periods and to assign some credit to that. For instance, at least 50 more employees compared to last year are taking alternative modes, and how to capture that what we see as progress when the number may not report that. That's part of our challenge and why we check in often with them.
So what you're saying is if somebody's AVR goes down instead of up during peak hours, they may nevertheless get credit for people who are coming in at 2 in the morning when no one else is on the streets, that we give credit for that?
Actually, the credit is not given for that, but we do want to look at not just the AVR reflects peak period travel behavior,
right,
but we also want to look at the overall mode split, and what that means in simple terms is looking how everyone's coming and going to the job site. So we want to look how many folks are taking one particular mode this year compared to last year. So we're looking at changes over time in all of the different modes. We're looking for patterns, and where we see increases in non-SOV transit, we want to acknowledge that, although they're not technically getting credit for that because the AVR calculation relies solely on peak periods Monday through Friday.
Thank you.
Thank you for your staff report, and seeing no other questions at this moment, we'll hear from the public. We'll hear from Denise Barton and Nancy Coleman.
And good evening, Development Agreement Reviews. Let's start with 1318 2nd Street. To review, Court and Scott, the owners, and Sierra Corporate Management have judgments and injunctions against them for violating state and local law, circumventing rent control law, breaching leases with residents, engages in unfair business practices, failure to maintain cases, intimidation, harassment, elder abuse, breach of the covenant of good faith and fair dealing, violations of business and professional code, and unjust enrichment. Yet this is who the city and police department choose to take the side of in many instances, including the violation of their development agreement to the point, in my opinion, of aiding a criminal entity. The DA violation was removing the privacy hedges on the roof and replacing them with spider plants. Code compliance has been out twice, cited the building once, after which stick plants were added to the spider plants, not the fully developed and mature hedges that had been there originally. Besides privacy, they also provide shade, and with the spring and summer already here, the residents would like them to be replaced as they were, as well as can also be seen in the picture Code Compliance had. Yet as of April 5th, 2018, Code Compliance tried to say that those sticks were okay, and this morning Jing closed the case, which does not speak highly of the city's questionable enforcement of development agreements, or violating state law. The building has over 15 units and is supposed to have an on-site manager for the residents, which it has never had. Yet the building management bragged that he was able to fool the police officer that came in inquiring about not having a resident manager. So the city has one on paper that doesn't exist. And this is not counting a tactic of raising utility costs frequently to make affordable housing not affordable. After all, the tenants received it. I was able to get a retraction for affordable housing tenants, but unless fighting management monthly, I hear micro-rate utilities have increased significantly. But this is who the city and police allow to operate in this manner and sides with over and against the residents of the building. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Coleman?
Thank you. I'm Nancy Coleman, and I'm representing only myself today, not NOMA nor any other agency or commission. What I want to look at in these development agreements is that the council asked and the planning department provides excellent, if not accurate, TDMs and AVRs. But there is much more to a development agreement than those issues. And there's no accountability for those other issues. For instance, rec and parks fees, childcare fees, historic preservation. Why is a community benefit listed in community benefits for LEED status. I mean, why is that considered? So I would like to see if on the housing units, on the housing fees, on the, some say housing parks mitigation fee. Well, what does that mean, and how is it accounted for, and how is it accounted for over time? Is it a one-time payment? If it's a one-time payment, how is it spent? If it's ongoing, then how is it spent? And this is not clear from reading the agreements, or at least the summary of the agreements. I'm looking at one particular agreement in the Colorado Center where they're going to provide community rooms to the public for community and neighborhood groups for free. But they're now requiring those neighborhood groups to get very expensive insurance policies in order to use the facilities. And then the staff report says that they're found to be in compliance. Well, they're not in compliance if they're charging. There are others as well that I could look at, but I think that the issue which I'm asking for is a categorization of the other community benefits, not simply the TDMs and the AVRs, in such a way that we can have some analysis of what money came in, what money was spent, and whether or not it's an ongoing basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman. That concludes public input. I'll ask staff a quick question on a follow-up. One of Ms. Coleman's comments, it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that all those fees she mentioned are collected one time early on in the process, and then we have a regular annual accounting of all those different types of fees and how much is in each account and what they've been spent on. Isn't that correct?
We do have a running track of when fee payments are made. We do. Some fees going back to the early 80s we have records of, and not the level of detail that we have and that we maintain today, but all the fees that are outlined in your staff report have accounting for them.
They've been collected and we get an annual report on, for instance, the parks fee or those sort of things, correct?
I will say that how the money is spent in terms of projects, we see that as a companion analysis and separate from DA monitoring, because what's in front of you is annual review of whether developers are in compliance with the terms of their agreement. Related but separate is how that money and those funds that have been collected are expended.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Vasquez, do you have a question?
Yes. Kind of along the same lines and what the speaker was mentioning in terms of the community benefits, what have we done to make sure, like I noticed a lot of these projects, especially along Colorado, the whole Water Gardens project, several of those projects, the agreement when they had those development agreements was to provide like community rooms. And in some cases, I think the one on, I don't know if I think it's the corner like 26th and Colorado, there's actually a park there that's supposed to be a community park. Yes. And I know for a while it seemed to have a lot of access to the community, and then there was a period there where it was difficult to get in there and use the facility. They said it was actually not for the community, and now I think it's come back online.
I will tell you, it sounds like you're referring to the Colorado Center property.
Yes.
We work very closely with the property, with the ownership, with respect to access regarding the park and the community room. I will say that the discussion about fees being paid for the community room, that is not the case in terms of use of the actual community room. We have a detailed accounting of how that room is maintained and which groups use it, and how that property complies with this requirement to provide the community room on the property. The park is also related. That's the open space requirement, and it is regulated per the DA and operated per the requirements of the DA.
But you said that you're following that pretty close, and you have a lot of good cooperation. How far back are you going back with that?
I go, with respect to Colorado Center, I go back to 2000 to 2009.
No, this was probably in the early 2000s. This probably was about 2002, 2003, somewhere in there, where it somehow it shut down, and then it came back online in the later years. And I'm just wondering, what do we have in place to, like a check and balance? Because it sounds like you're on top of it, but somewhere in there was a hiccup for a few years.
I can't speak to the answer to the issues that may have arisen. I know there were some issues related to dogs and how dogs would maybe on leash or off leash at that facility. But I can only say since 2009, we have worked closely when issues do come up. Access to the tennis courts, for instance, how the tennis courts may be used by the public. The DA specifies that the park will be operated and regulated similarly to a city park, although not public. So we have looked at details like use of the tennis courts, use of the community room. We check in with them. But I cannot speak to the early 2000s, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
Thanks, Ms. Tanamore. So, as I read the staff report, you didn't just look at traffic and AVR and TDM and all of that. You actually did look at a number of the community benefits, and in the report outline how and when the DAs have complied with the community benefits. Am I missing? I'm just confused because it sounds like people are saying you only focused on AVR and traffic, and I see discussions about what has been done to comply with other community benefits. Am I missing something?
We do review compliance with all of the requirements of the development agreement, including the community benefits. Historically, we have focused at council on the average vehicle ridership and TDM program implementation because that's an important issue to the community. We do hear the feedback that perhaps some other areas, in terms of the many factors that we focus on in our annual review, perhaps there are other areas to emphasize in addition to the trip reduction. We just know that in general trip reduction is such an important and critical issue to the community that we want to provide the detail on that.
But if you found somebody was out of compliance with the community benefits as opposed to some traffic or planning related, you would let us know that and list them as being out of compliance in your report, wouldn't you?
We would.
Okay, great. Thank
and we
you.
certainly work with property owners throughout the year to double check those.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Himmerich.
Yeah, so I do have a couple of questions. So on the Colorado Center property, I have heard that they've been requiring substantial insurance policies to be posted by community groups to use the park and the community rooms. I wonder if you've heard about that or if we can tell people, should there be such a demand, what they ought to do about it.
Thank you. I am aware of the issue, and we have been discussing it. And so, in particular, with respect to the Colorado Center DA, the DA does not contain a specific insurance requirement for use of the open space. I want to be clear that the issue with respect to liability insurance that's being asked for is for use of the open space for organized events that are publicized and marketed to the public. This is not a requirement for use of the actual community room. The liability insurance is not an imposition for the use of the room. This is an issue that was brought to our attention with respect to a community event for use of the open space marketed to the public.
Right, but it was a community event by a community group, by a neighborhood group.
Right, and one thing that the development agreement does specify that we do look to carefully is that the Colorado Center Park may be used to the same extent as a public park, subject to reasonable regulations that are approved by the city. With respect to the question that arose about liability insurance, we did look at how the city manages and operates its parks, and the city may implement the requirement for liability insurance based on certain criteria. And we believe that the DA doesn't preclude Boston Properties from imposing that, but we have looked at and carefully looked at the level of coverage that they have been requesting historically, and we asked them to lower that limit to be in more alignment with what the city may require.
I was just curious. I mean, really what I'm asking is not so much that specific thing, is should somebody who gets a DA from us and make a certain and makes a certain promise to us to do X or Y, or is the planning department who somebody who feels as if they're running afoul of it should talk to? That's what I'm asking you.
Questions often come to me most of the time.
Okay, good.
All
Okay.
roads lead to planning. Yes.
Okay, I'll give
At
them
least
your
to start.
phone number. No, I'm joking. So that's my first question. My next question is a follow-up on Ted's question about how money is spent. So these sums of money, I know come in, and I know they're supposedly, and I see this is a Jing question, yes? Yeah. Maybe, yeah. And I do wonder, because you say that it's not in this report, but I want to know where we see an accounting of that money, if ever.
So we've, over the years, we've worked closely with finance, not only as part of, and you've seen the annual report on fees collected pursuant to the Mitigation Fee Act.
Mm-hmm.
Fees collected for development agreements are not precisely those kinds of fees. They're not Mitigation Fee Act fees, but the law does state that we have to follow the accounting procedures. So that money is in terms of us tracking, like literally planning, we collect the fees. We are not necessarily the spender of the fees. Those are the operating departments. But that money is tracked in terms of the accounts that they're in and what they're used for. And when money is collected, when it is distributed to those departments, it's with a memo that specifies precisely how that money is used, per the language of the development agreement. But that is looked at on an annual basis.
So that's something I would call Gigi about. Is that right?
Yeah, very true.
Okay.
Because the other roads lead to finance.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's, away from planning and towards finance. Thank you.
Councilmember Vasquez.
Just to follow back up, and maybe this is more of a legal question. Moving forward, though, because it sounds like you're on top of it, and I'm thinking, 10, 15 years from now, when maybe you're not with us anymore, in the community, she's got to relax at some point, right? She's going to retire. But unlike most of these folks that don't want to leave, but at the end of the day, what can we put in? Is there something we can put in place legally that gives the community some assurance that if in fact, like I said, this happened? I know I was working with a community group. This was in the early 2000s, and I sent them over there because I knew that was supposed to be a community park, a public park, right? And they were turned away. And I just don't know what. Obviously, you weren't working for the city at the time, or responsible for that. Otherwise, it probably would have been taken care of. So I guess my question is, moving forward, is there anything legally we could have in place that would give community groups some assurances that if in fact they are turned away, they have some legal recourse to put a little pressure on these folks?
There are the existing default provisions in the agreement, and so presumably somebody will be doing an annual accounting because the agreement provides for that and contemplates that if there was a default, there is a mechanism to bring it to your attention and to default them if necessary. So it's already built into the agreement. It's just a matter of being implemented by whoever is there in 15 years.
I also want to point out that at any point in time, if someone has a complaint, they can always file a complaint with code enforcement. They do have responsibility for enforcing the development agreement. Obviously, we have relationships with each and every developer, at the moment, or the property owner at the moment, and we try to work with them in that respect. But code enforcement also is, at any point in time, that's a place that a community member can always go to when they feel that there's something not right or there's a complaint.
Well, with all due respect, our code enforcement hasn't been the best. On Ocean Park Boulevard, we had that building that was fenced off and boarded off. It was, I think, a quadruplex for like 30 years, and code enforcement couldn't do anything about it. They finally built it out. Now it's finally being developed. But then I just noticed just a few parcels over to the west, we got another one that just got boarded up. I hope it doesn't take 30 years to get them to do something with that property.
Yeah, I can't comment on the past, obviously, but I think we have a pretty good crew now on code enforcement.
All right, I'm going to keep an eye on this one.
Councilmember, my add two thoughts is that we did recently update our vacant building ordinance to give more teeth in those situations. And in terms of the development agreement compliance, there was a period in the 2000s where Unfortunately, the city was not doing a great job of having an annual review, but since I think about 2009, we've had these regular reports, and that's provided a mechanism for people to voice their concerns about any DA they might feel is out of compliance. So I think we're doing a better job than we may have in the past. So, council members, the matter is before us. Amy, have any more questions of staff? If not, thank you for your presentation. We're apparently looking for a motion to have reviewed the status of the DA agreement compliance and determine good faith compliance for those that are compliant and listed as such in Table 1.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so moved by Councilmember Hemmerich, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Davis. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember McCune?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember Hemmerich?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Day?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connor?
Yes.
And Mayor Winter?
Yes, so that passes unanimously, and we now go on to what everyone's waiting for, the council member discussion items.
Item 13A, appointment of one unscheduled vacancy on the Santa Monica Library Board for a term ending June 30th, 2018. You have no request to speak.
All right, do we have any nominations? Councilmember McEwen.
I'll nominate Arlene Hopkins.
Any other nominations? Seeing none, I suggest we move by acclamation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Congratulations, Ms. Hopkins. She's the newest member of our library board. And could we clerk call item 13B, please?
13B, request of Mayor Winter, Mayor Pro Tem Davis, and Councilmember McCune that the council allocate $14,000 of its discretionary funds to the Main Street Business Improvement Association to aid in the production of its Summer Solstice, a family-friendly community festival on Main Street. The funds will be used to offset the cost of the city-required staffing for public safety and fire safety officers and road closures on Main Street, among other costs. And you have one request to speak.
All right, well, I'll jump into this and then see if the Mayor Pro Tem or Councilmember McEwen have anything else to add. But most of us are aware that every year the Main Street has its Summer Solstice event. This year they have, after extensive negotiations over recent years with the city, we've entered an agreement to allow them to close off the north half of Main Street for this event. In doing so, there are additional costs that they are incurring, in part because of new requirements by public safety to keep the public safe in a more dangerous world we live in. And so they're asking for some help with doing so. We took this agenda item on as much as any other reason is that just in recent months we talked about desiring to see more street closures and street festivals, and Main Street Business Improvement Association called our bluff and is asking for our help. Mayor Pro Tem Davis, do you have anything to add?
No, that was a great summary.
Councilmember McEwen?
I'll just point out that over the years, this has grown from being essentially a sidewalk sale with some entertainment to being a real entertainment event and a community party. And I think it really is a worthwhile expenditure of public funds to support this.
Mr. Hall, you have your 2 minutes as requested. You're here. You might as well come up and say something.
I just wanted to say thank you for considering. We just wanted to show up. This is Jenny Rice. She is producing the event. So we just wanted to be here in case you had any questions, for us. But that's really it. I don't have much to say.
No, Mayor Pro Tem Davis has a question.
Okay.
She wants to know where you bought your hat. No.
Where did I get my hat?
No.
Bowman Hat Company.
Well, what I was actually going to say is, since you have the mic, and since we are on KCRW, why don't you tell people the dates of the festival?
Oh boy, I'm not qualified for that. I'm going to ask Jenny to come up here. It's on June 24th this year, but Jenny's got a lot more information about that if you want any plugs. Jenny, would you like to say anything?
Sunday, June 24th, 12 to 7.
No, that was Sunday, June 24th, 12 to 7.
Everyone
on
come
Main
out.
Street, Santa Monica.
It'll
It's
be a
always a
great
great
time.
event.
Cover bands,
Thank you.
original music,
All sorts of
lots
things.
of people just having fun.
Yes, fun is good. We like to have more fun in this city. All right, council members, the matter is before us.
I'll move the item.
Second.
All right, moved by Mayor Pro Tem Davis, seconded by Councilmember McEwen to allocate the $14,000 to the Main Street Business Improvement Association to aid in the production of the summer solstice. And we are spending money, we will need a roll call vote.
Councilmember McCune?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmerich.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
Yes.
Councilmember O'Day.
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connor.
Yes.
And Mayor Pro Tem Winter. I'm sorry, Mayor Winter.
First I don't get a vote,
I
then I get
know.
demoted. All because
take
I
it personally.
complained about the screen I got tonight. Okay, so that passes unanimously. Could the clerk call item 13C?
13C is request of Mayor Winter, Mayor Pro Tem Davis, and Councilmember McKeown that the council allocate $7,500 of discretionary funds to serve as the matching grant to assist students from lower income families to participate in this year's student culture exchange program with our friendship city of Kisagawa, Japan. Funds will be provided to the Santa Monica Science Magnet, a 501c3 nonprofit. Oops, nonprofit, and you have one request to speak, and it's Melissa Hannett, and she just turned it in.
All right. Hold on, Ms. Hannah. We'll introduce the item, but be there and be ready. So we have done this in the past. It's been, by all reports, very successful in giving the opportunity for some lower-income kids to travel to Japan as part of the Science Magnet program at JAMS, and I think we should do it again. Mayor Pro Tem Davis or Councilmember McEwen, do you have anything to add?
I just want to add that this is a wonderful program that allows us to send students to our, and I can't remember the official title, but one of the cities we have a relationship with.
Sister city.
Is it a full-blown sister city?
It's a
Okay.
friendship.
Well, no, we know they're a friendship city.
It's a friendship. It's a friendship city. It's a city that we like to send our youth to, and they act. I think it's important to point out that they act as ambassadors for our city when they go there and interact with both the children and adults in Kisagawa, and then the people from Kisagawa actually come here. So it's a wonderful, ongoing year-to-year relationship, and I really appreciate the efforts of everybody who makes it happen. So I'm, for one, obviously happy to support it.
Councilmember McEwen, anything to add?
Well, I just want to point out this is yet another example of the sorts of things that we do for students in Santa Monica outside of the school district umbrella. I get to sit here and vote on this and actually sponsor it because this money is going to a nonprofit. So the city not only supports our school district, but we support educational efforts, cultural efforts, and student success throughout our city in many ways. This is just another one.
All right, Ms. Hannett, come on up and tell us why this is such a wonderful idea.
Here today. Everyone ran off. Thank you. I actually don't even have kids at JAMS anymore. Both of my kids are at SAMO. I stayed on to run this trip again because I feel it's super, you all actually realize how important it is. I felt it was so important that I stayed back. They couldn't kill me. They couldn't get rid of me, so I'm running the trip again this year. I just want to let you know, last year we had 3 kids who had never been on an airplane, had never been out of California. And they benefited from the donation that you made. So this is hugely important. It's not just sending a bunch of kids on a trip. It's truly life-changing. These kids were so happy. Their families were proud of them. Some of these families had never been anywhere. I mean, they just couldn't afford to do it. So they are very excited. I have families that are very eager to hear about being able to send their kids because of this donation. And I truly, truly appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That was very compelling. Councilmember Vasquez may have a question.
Quick
for you,
question
Ms.
for you.
Okay.
So you're not, I thought maybe you're not a teacher at John.
I'm not a teacher. I'm a parent.
You're a parent.
My daughter went on the trip 4 years ago. And last year, my husband was a chaperone and my son got to go. So I'm the only one that hasn't been. So we're all going to go back as a family at some point. But my husband, we kind of fought over who got to go as the chaperone last year. I was the trip coordinator, and so I sent them, and there weren't, I think I may have scared off a couple of the parents when I asked who wanted to organize this year because I had it very detailed. So no one else was brave enough to dip their toe in the water, so I stayed on because I had the knowledge of how the trip ran, how to run the fundraising, the contacts with our Kisagawa counterparts. I hosted a couple of the chaperones last year and had taken care of the barbecue at Clover, the welcome barbecue for the Kisagawa students and whatnot. So I stayed on. I really wanted this to grow and expand, and I've been talking with Jeff Jarrow, the Sister City Association. So I email and talk with him about how to bring more kids into the program, and this is kind of like a starter, for the kids to dip their toe in the water, so when they get into high school, they can expand their trips that they want to take. So it's just been really great.
Is Katie still there at John Adams, or who's running it from the faculty now? The Science Magnet.
who runs the Science Magnet. It's Kirsten Jurwitz. She's the Science Magnet president. She's in this, I think she's teaching 8th grade science right now. I'm not quite sure like how that shifts around every year. So I'm not on campus, so I don't really have much information anymore since both of my kids are at SAMO.
No, thanks for helping out. It's a great program.
Yeah.
My kids went through it years
Yeah,
back.
it's amazing. Like it's really like some of these kids just really like it's open the world. They realize that they actually can travel and do things. So it's really impressive. But I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming down, Ms. Hannett, and for validating our past decisions. Councilmember McEwen.
Our public speaker mentioned something that we probably should have said in introducing this, which is not only is this donation to a nonprofit matching funds, which means we're helping them raise money from other sources as well, but our donation specifically is to enable kids from families who otherwise couldn't afford this trip to participate. So it has a lot to do with our maintaining diversity priority in the city as well as our commitment to education. And I'd like to move that we do this.
Second.
All right, so the motion by Councilmember McEwen, second by Mayor Pro Tem Davis, is to allocate $7,500 of council discretionary funds as a matching grant for to assist students from lower-income families to participate in this cultural exchange program with our friendship city of Kisagawa through the Santa Monica Science Magnet, which is a nonprofit organization. We're spending money once again. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember O'Connor?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Day?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmelrich?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember McCune?
Yes.
Mayor Winter?
Yes. So put photos up on Instagram or something. So we... All right. Thank you. And could the clerk call the 14 item, please?
14, public input. Public comment is permitted only on items not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. State law prohibits the city council from taking any action on items not listed on the agenda, including issues raised under this agenda item, and you have 2 requests to speak.
All right. We will hear from Denise Barton for 1 minute and Art Casillas for 2.
Good evening. Tonight I believe I've given you enough reasons, and I would like to encourage everyone again to participate in signing the petition to put term limits on our city council members on the ballot to 3 terms in office. You can go to santamonicatransparency.org to download a short petition, and you can sign the petition and be the circulator. Do remember to fill in the circulator's portion on the 3rd page. Keep all 3 pages together, and please follow all the other Santa Monica term limit signature rules listed. You can also go to Santa Monica Term Limits on Facebook or Nextdoor to find a location where you can sign a petition. And I will also be available to collect signatures at City Council meetings until the end of April. Thank you very much.
Mr. Casillas.
Art Casillas. In the Moss Adams City Hired Audit Police Department, St. Santa Monica Police average response time 33.2 minutes when average amongst other peer cities scrutinized with 16.8 minutes. Santa Monica is known for 58% previous crime per resident. There were peer cities 2016-2017. Santa Monica Police Department cleared or solved only 54% of its violent crimes. Santa Monica Police reacts to calls from beach patrols. If we had community-based policing, we'd cut times to help prevent crimes. At election time, Santa Monica Police got a 3-day work week, too much overtime, and too much benefits. Is that extortion? Lieutenant Saul Rodriguez then says, audit, quote, it seems hard for both public and police to watch suspects arrested for lesser crimes jailed and then released the next day and back in the streets, he said. End of quote. It seems like to me Rodriguez is trying to justify City Council and City Manager Rick Cole's priority of Pier Promenade and Palisades Park, homeless and Expo line security for tourists, and the heck with us stupid resident taxpayers, churches, schools, families. Yet if we only keep a criminal in jail overnight, that may be enough to prevent another rape, robbery, murder, kidnap, drugs, home invasions, or murder. Or are you selecting crimes to manipulate crime statistics? I've complained about gang and drug crimes for years from rent control apartments that you and police allow and enable drug sales and use, and parolees behind my brother's house and daycare center and rear fence. I guess to intimidate our lives in safety, so I'll shut up. But I work for God and I can't shut up. Gang enhancement and willful endangerment are illegal. City Attorney Dilg and Police Chief Renaud. God helps those who help themselves. So whenever you get ready, God's watching. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Casillas. That concludes the public input. Council members, I have no adjournments. I believe the city manager does. Does anybody else? Councilmember McEwen.
Well, before we move on to the sadness of adjournments, I've been staring at the agenda and seeing that this meeting is happening on April 10th, and it kept hitting me. April 10th, what does that date mean to me? Back many years ago, elections in the city of Santa Monica used to be held on the second Tuesday of April. And a very important election was held on April 10th, 1979. Tonight is the 39th birthday of rent control in the city of Santa Monica.
Great. Did you bring cupcakes? And anything else from the council? Otherwise, we'll give the city manager the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Early in his remarkable career, Hank Dittmar was only with the city of Santa Monica for 6 years, but his untimely passing reminds us of the remarkable contributions that are made every day by our city staff, as well as the legacy that they leave. Hank Dittmar, who died of cancer last week at age 62, was a global sustainability authority, an urbanist. He advised governments, companies, and communities all over the world on making cities and towns more livable and resilient. For 8 years, Hank directed the Prince's Foundation for Building Community, directing the foundation's philanthropic work on behalf of Britain's Prince Charles, which promotes timeless ways of building and more sustainable development around the world. Prior to that, Hank spearheaded a profound rethinking of American planning principles as the founding president and CEO of Reconnecting America, which pioneered at the national level the new model of mobility that is one of Santa Monica's 5 strategic goals. He also served as the influential chairman of the Congress for the New Urbanism, which has championed a revolution in how Americans think about their cities and towns. And as the founding director of the Surface Transportation Project, he spearheaded a successful national coalition that incorporated walking, cycling, and public transit into national policy and landmark federal law, encouraging the planning of walkable cities and towns. Hank was an influential advisor to leaders around the world, a respected writer who authored 4 books, and the winner of the prestigious Seaside Prize. In 1983, Hank went to work as a transit planner for the Big Blue Bus. In his short stint here, he helped create the Light Rail Set-Aside Fund to prod the county to bring light rail to Santa Monica. That fund was later used to purchase Bergamont Station and the 4th and Colorado sites. After just a year at Big Blue Bus, city manager John Jalili named Hank, who was then just 28 years old, as the director of the Santa Monica Airport. In his 5 years at the helm, Hank implemented the provisions of an agreement between the city and the FAA to upgrade the airport. It included a new administration building and taxiway improvements that made the airport safer. He developed a strengthened noise abatement program and oversaw the addition of other facilities, including the Museum of Flying and the Santa Monica College Satellite Center. He left Santa Monica in 1989 to return to work for San Francisco's Metropolitan Transportation Commission, where he was recruited to head special projects and later served as director of legislative affairs. He often spoke fondly of his years in Santa Monica. A visionary and a leader who left his mark on how we think about cities and how we build the future, Hank was also a brilliant and far-ranging man of the world. His family was quoted as saying, "Hank's love of music, literature, and art filled his life with joy. He was moved to tears by beauty. Hank nurtured friendships spanning continents and decades. His positivity in the face of adversity aided his tireless work to better the world. As a father and husband, his resilience and humor will always remain an inspiration."
Thank you for that, and our heartfelt condolences go out to his family over his untimely passing. Before we adjourn, a reminder that we will be back here in 2 weeks on April 24th for our regular meeting, but because the fun never ends, we also will be convening our annual retreat on April 21st, 9 a.m. at Virginia Avenue Park. There's a particular room there, the Helmetary. And finally, don't forget to file your tax return. And with that, we are adjourned.